I'm going to welcome up front to actually give us some feedback and reflection and some poetry with Saol, Dermot Bolger.
Can you hear this? That's great, yeah. I feel like a rapper now, you know? I don't know why this incredibly infectious and happy occasion. I don't know why I feel happy because I'm a bald, middle-aged poet and it's hard to make a living without 3 dozen wonderful writers coming up behind me. But it's a huge pleasure to be associated with responding to this book, which is an absolutely magnificent book. And it's said that the definition of a gentleman is somebody who could make a long speech but doesn't, and I'm going to be a gentleman and make a very short speech. If I made a long speech, I would single out every poem in this book because each of them speaks from the heart with huge truth. When I read a poem like I Am Here by Rachel Martin or I Stand a Strong Woman by Norma McKenna, not only when looking at poetry, you look at the strength of the verse, the strength of the line, the strength of the imagery. What I feel that this book is not only the strength of that, but the strength of the women who wrote the poems, the strength of the lives that have been lived, the lessons that have been learned, the battles that have been fought. And this is an incredibly strong book, an incredibly inspiring book. There's a poem that's called The Battle by Siobhan Dowling. And it transcends its story in that it's a battle about addiction, but it could be a battle about anything in life. It could be a battle about anybody in any country, anywhere, could read that poem and say, that's my life. Because we're all engaged in different battles as we go through life. And that poem to me was that the great thing about poetry is that you can begin with something very, very personal and you can actually have something that's deeply universal. And so many of these poems are universal. It was mentioned here, the poem 7, This Is Home by Michelle. That to me, that wasn't a poem, that was an entire novel. There was an entire life in there and the life of so many people in there. And it was a hugely inspiring and hugely thought-provoking and courageous piece. And it was a great pleasure to actually read it. It's one of the longest poems in the book, but poetry is not about length, but about impact. And there are very, very small poems. There's a poem like Smile, there's a poem like Colour, which is an incredibly happy poem, Twins, which is a deeply sad and deeply moving poem. And addiction, with a wonderful line that addiction is a full-time job, which it truly is. There's the poem Drink, which is, you haven't read these poems yet, but it's a very, very simple poem. It's really simple, and the strength is in the simplicity. The strength is in the way it's just simply, there's no provocation, there's no trying to dress up in poetic language. This is very, very blunt, this is very, very straight, this is very, very true, and truth runs from every lines. And what I like is that the poems are not just personal poems. The poems sweep out from outside that. They take in the 1914 lockout. They encompass the whole history of the last 100 years, the whole history of change for women, the whole history of change for society. And actually, I love the range there. I love in poems like I'm a Woman, that's me, and Guardian Angel. These poems are personal, and yet they're deeply, deeply universal. And I actually love that about them. There's a poem called Women Are So Great, and as a man I'm not going to argue because I know well I'm outnumbered, you know. The poems go on wonderful journeys. It's amazing how you meet somebody 5 or 10 years time who's read your poem and remembers your poem and your poem meant something to them. They also are a way of explaining ourselves to our loved ones, to our parents, to our children, and I think that sort of, when people read these poems, they see a different side of us. When people read any book of poems, and what's wonderful about poetry also is that all poets are equal. All it matters that the words are on the page, and that people don't see the person, whoever that person is, anybody, they see the words, and the words are what count, and the emotions there, and the words that course through these poems. They sing with truth, they sing with life's struggles, and they sing with hope and with the human spirit. And the poems that every poet in this book should be really, really proud to have written, and I'm very proud to be associated with. And I'm going to read one poem, and when I wrote a sequence of poems some years ago, And you always hope that one day your poems will find their very, very right place. And for me, this poem is called Possibility, and it's been published in various places. But when I actually read the proof of this book, I said, where I'd like this poem to have its resting place, where I feel it's really made its home, is that for this one morning I can stand among you and be in this mythology. And so I suggested that we put this poem in the book, and it's a poem called Possibility. I don't need to explain the themes, because the themes are expressed by the other poets in this book, by my fellow writers, with far more eloquence than I have done here. But I'd like to read this one poem and say how much I am proud to be in this book and to be here today. Possibility. Just leave yourself open to the possibility that one dawn you wake to find your mind clear. One dawn you win back the love you derailed. One dawn you will kick the habit of blaming yourself. One dawn you will wake to hear a clear signal, a wavelength unmuffled by interference or static. You will recognize the DJ's voice as your own, advertising a unique extravaganza treasure hunt where every clue is a signpost through your past. You will walk through a maze of sleeping estates, collecting golden tickets concealed amid mistakes you made when addiction stopped you thinking straight. That dawn, when figures emerge through the chaos, you will walk forward, unafraid to embrace happiness. Thank you.